Okay, today we're going to do vertex form. So before we started online school, you had done standard form, and now we're going to do vertex form. In some ways, vertex is easier. It's just a little bit harder to find the x-intercepts. So when we're in vertex form, it's y minus k equals a times the quantity x minus h squared. The first thing we want to decide, does our parabola open up or down? So we look at the a value. The a value, if it's positive or greater than 0, we open up. And if it's negative, less than 0, then we open down. So if it's negative, we open down. The vertex is going to be our h and our k. So the h is with the x, so that's our x value of our vertex, and our k is with our y, so that's the y value of our vertex. The one thing you want to make sure is that you take the opposite sign. And I'll explain that when we do an example problem. So if I take out the h, it should be the opposite sign. If I take out the k, it's the opposite sign. The axis of symmetry is just the x of your vertex. Your y-intercepts, you plug in 0 for x and solve for y. And your x-intercepts, this is the one that's a little bit different, is you plug in 0 for y. Instead of factoring like we did in standard form, you're going to use the square root property, which you might need some review on, and we'll do in the examples. So I'm only going to do 2 examples just because if the video is too long, it won't upload. So let me go through this one. Here's our first example. I want to write it in standard form. So standard form is y minus k equals a x minus h squared. So I need to move this 1 over. So when I do that, I get y minus 1 equals negative 2 x minus 2 squared. Here's my standard, or here's my vertex form. My a value is negative 2. So that means this is negative, so it opens down. My vertex is hk. So that means I need to take the opposite sign. So I'm going to be looking at 2 and negative 2 and negative 1. So my vertex is going to be 2, 1, because I take the opposite sign. My axis of symmetry is 2. It's just the x of my vertex. My y-intercept, I'm going to plug in 0 for x. So I get y is equal to negative 2, 0 minus 2 squared plus 1. If I just do the calculations for this, I'm going to end up with y is equal to negative 7. So let's kind of plot where we're at yet and kind of decide if we have x-intercepts. So if I plot this, my vertex is at 2, 1. I have a y-intercept at negative 7. I have an axis of symmetry at 0, or at 2. I reflect the point over to get another point. So I have x-intercepts, so we need to use the square root property to solve to find the x-intercepts. So x-intercepts, you plug in 0 for y and solve for x. So I need to get the squared piece of my equation by itself. So I'm trying to isolate x minus 2 squared here. So I move the 1 over. I'm going to divide by negative 2 because I'm still trying to get this alone. Cancel. So now I'm left with 1/2 equals x minus 2 squared. Once I get the squared piece of my equation alone, I'm going to use the square root property, which says take the square root of both sides. Don't forget your plus and minus. So I have x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus square root of 1/2. Add 2 to both sides, and I get x is equal to 2 plus or minus square root 1/2. You're going to go ahead and put this in your calculator to get your 2 points. So I'm going to get x is equal to see what I got here. I got x is equal to 2.7 and x is equal to 1.3. These are my x-intercepts. I'm going to go ahead and plot those. X-intercepts at 2.7 and 1.3. And here's my parabola. So that's how you do a problem. First, you decide, does it open up or down? Find your vertex, find your axis of symmetry, find your y-intercepts, check to see if you have x-intercepts. If you do, solve for those and then plot it. I'm going to put up another video that has the other examples. I'll do one example at a time just so my videos don't get too long.